In 2011, NASA scientists voted on the most plausible science fiction films of all time. They chose Gattaca, the 1998 film about a future where people's livelihood is based on their genetics, as their number one choice for the most plausible film. The film deals with the concept of eugenics and the possible societal changes that can be caused by pre-planned genes. The science of the genetic planning, as well as the space program and the other future tech in the film, is largely seen as technically flawless as it can be by the scientists. But one thing still seems really off. Why is everybody smoking in it? Sure, you can't drink too much before a test day, and even the most minor heartbeat change will raise alarm bells, but daily smoking is okay? The amount of Americans who smoke cigarettes has consistently gone down in the last few decades, according to the CDC. Yet, smoking is prevalent in this film and other sci-fi as well. So what gives? The filmmakers of Gattaca could be so scientifically accurate in some things, yet not foresee the downfall of smoking, and the NASA scientists don't have a problem with this for a film being seen as the most plausible science fiction film? The answer to all these questions might be that they're not trying to predict the future, or at least all of future, but another future entirely. This film and many science fiction films like it belong to a movement in art called Retrofuturism. Retrofuturism is the combination of the terms retro and future, which seem like opposites, but art critics have combined the terms to define the use of a style or aesthetic considered futuristic in an earlier era, according to Oxford Dictionary. Since the great technological progress brought on by the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century, writers and artists have tried predicting what the future will look like. In the post-World War II advancement heyday of the 1950s, modernist artists and architects were inspired by what the future may look like. But since progress moves in utterly unpredictable ways,
what's next? What's next? You never know. You never really know.
Artists didn't get everything, or occasionally anything, right. Sometimes they were too optimistic, thinking the world would be an almost utopia by the end of the 20th century. Sometimes they thought neo-apocalypse was inevitable in the coming years. Sometimes they predicted rich technologies would remain and which would be replaced incorrectly. Whatever the reason, large amounts of art that predicted a future that would never happen have been made, and their influence has reached millions. But in the 1980s, a lot of technological progress predicted in the 50s and 60s had never manifested. As many looked back fondly or disfondly at this vision of the future by the artists of the past, they started to use those designs to influence their own art. In a 1984 review for Terry Gilliam's film Brazil, New York critic Pauline Kael described the film as a retrofuturist fantasy, one of the first print uses of the word. Brazil is notable to retrofuturism beyond this as well, as it may be the first retrofuturist film in intention. See, while older sci-fi films such as Metropolis, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and even the Jetsons TV show are now classified as retrofuturistic because they represent a past idea of what the future may hold, they weren't really made to be retrofuturistic films, since the filmmakers weren't trying to replicate a past era's vision of the future as its setting. They were making their own. Brazil, however, is not like this. The film was intentionally made to look like a 1940s Orwellian outlook at the future. The machines are mechanical and lack the more sleek design that most electronics had by the 1980s. 2001: A Space Odyssey may represent a 1960s vision of the future, but since it was made in the 60s, it's not looking back at an old vision of the future. But why make a film that occurs in a place that will never happen? Well, filmmakers may be inspired to make a retrofuturist film for a number of reasons. They may find the idea of creating a world that won't ever exist as exciting. It's ground for unique world building that can't quite be matched. Retrofuturist films can combine themes of nostalgia and optimism for the future. Of course, some retrofuturist films can carry the opposite feeling. The filmmakers may look back cynically at the past's vision of the future and its inherent flaws. Brad Bird's Tomorrowland combines these two outlooks as it shows the city of the future as a doomed project that may lead to the end of mankind. Yet it also shows the optimistic outlook at the future prevailing at the end, and possibly leading to a better future. For Blade Runner 2049, a retro-future look was used to follow the look of the original Blade Runner film, which is now retro-futuristic in the same way 2001 is. Key features of 2049's retro-future look is the advertisements for brands that existed in the 80s and were included in the original film but have since gone under, like Atari and Pan America Airlines, and the abandoned Las Vegas casino with Elvis holograms. But even with the original Blade Runner, some of its choices for its future setting weren't just to make the film look like it was in the future, but rather a continuation of an already futurized world that had to be developed before its 1983 release date. The production design for the film was meant to look like 20th century buildings that had been built upon for its realistic future look. This is why the film uses so many real buildings like the Bradbury Building or the Enos House in Los Angeles as filming locations. The film also features characters smoking, though not really as a prediction for the future as much as a tie to a bygone era, and taking inspiration from the cinematography of smoking from film noir. This too is why Gattaca features smoking as an aesthetic choice and not a prediction of the future. This is one of the reasons that makes Gattaca a great example of a retro-futurist film. The characters wear suits everywhere, they smoke, and they go to a speakeasy-esque bar, all representing a bygone era that the characters and the filmmakers still want to experience. The architecture of the film is that of the modernists of the 50s and 60s that had such grand predictions for the future. This is best exemplified by its inclusion of the Marin County Civic Center as its stand-in for the main setting of the Space Center. The building was the last designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, the modernist architect who designed the aforementioned Enos House as well. The film's subject can be bleak, as it showcases a future where society is preoccupied with genes, which echoes similar 20th century sentiments. Yet it still has a positive outlook for the future, shown through its lead character whose goal is to reach for the stars, a callback to the aspirations of the NASA astronauts and scientists in the 60s and the ones today who thought so highly of this film. As Gattaca's connection to the past is highlighted by every one of these features, it shows why retrofuturist films and other forms of this art exist. Because even if this place, this idea of a fantastical future, won't happen, it can still teach us a lot about where we came from, where we are right now, and where we can go if we dream big enough.